right. Welcome, Sazzad. It's great to connect with you after quite some time. I mean, we've known each other for long, but it's been quite a
Yeah.
while since last time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see you as well.
Great. So, Sazzad, I know that you've been working on SDI Academy for quite some time now. If you could just take us back down the memory lane and share with us how do you get started and what was the trigger to get you started on this journey?
Yeah, sure. So for SDI Academy, it was really a very ground-up initiative. I started this when I was very young. I was actually in high school still at that point in time. The whole idea was that my own story inspired me to start this. So I migrated from Bangladesh to Singapore when I was about 11 years old. And when I came to Singapore, I couldn't really speak the language. And it was really hard for me to get into school and assimilate with the rest of the society. And that gave me a bit of perspective. Of course, it's not the same, but it gave me a bit of perspective of how much even harder it is for the migrant workers who don't even have their family with them, don't have a support system, and they need to navigate through this space, and they are working super hard. And a lot of times, if they don't understand the language, they put their lives in danger. So, and talking to the migrant workers day to day, it gave me a lot more in-depth story about what really goes on in their life. And that kind of got me to thinking, what can I do at a young age with very little skill? What can I really do to really help them? And in fact, the answer came from the migrant workers themselves. They were like, could you coach us with English so that we can understand things better, we can upgrade ourselves, and also know what are the safety instructions that are given to us so that we can protect ourselves.
Great.
So that's when I started as a very ground-up initiative with a bunch of people that I knew over the years. I formed relationships over the years, and they started telling their friends when they realized that how personalized those lessons were, because I went through a similar journey, so I could relate and I could only focus on the things that mattered most. So I think that bit of twist really gave a lot of perspective into this, right? So yeah, that's how our journey started, and it's been about 6 years now.
Nice. And how was the initial I would say response to your efforts from your family, from your friends, from your teachers? And did you face some skepticism, or did you face, some maybe, I guess people trying to tell you that, focus on your studies first. Did you have some of that?
Yeah, of course. I had that issue. I think especially coming from an Asian family, especially a Desi Bangladeshi family, where my parents really had a lot of expectations out of me that I was supposed to study medicine, become a doctor, and fulfill my parents' wish. And they were like, we migrated here so that you can do better and not take a path like this. So definitely there's a lot of resistance, but I think over the years I was really stubborn, and that really helped to get my parents to realize that this is how it is going to be like. So might as well not do too much. And I try to be practical as well, and give myself a timeline that I need to be sustainable by this time. And we're very lucky that a lot of things worked out. Very, very fortunate, very blessed to have people's support. But I think at the initial stage, you need to be really stubborn, and you need to be really, really persistent as well to make things work.
That's great. And did you have any role models back then? Were you looking for advice to certain mentors, advisors, or just role models that kept you going? Because I'm assuming in the beginning it would have been quite difficult.
Of course. I think especially this is my first ever venture. I don't have any background in running an organizations before. So I was trying to absorb as much as possible, networking with as many people as I could, but most importantly, reading as many books as I can to really absorb the best knowledge from people who have written down. So I didn't really have a specific role model, but of course there are people that I really, really looked up to, and I took bits and pieces from different people. So that really helped, and I'm quite glad actually that I didn't have a specific role model, because what happens is usually there's this advice that you shouldn't meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed, and because we are human, we make mistakes. So if we don't put our heroes in that kind of pedestal that we need to emulate every single thing, but rather know that they're human and they have good side and they have certain limitations, and we only take the good sides out of that. I think I had that mindset, and that really helped to gather as much of things. At the same time, I was always very keen to bring in innovation, bring in technology. Like I was fascinated by whole Silicon Valley vibe. At the same time, the good part of it, of course, right? So how can we infuse some of those lessons and accelerate social impact by bringing those things together? So I was always fascinated by that. I was always into science, and that really helped me to get me thinking, how can we use science and technology for the betterment? So these are the mindset. So even though we are a social enterprise, we always had the mindset of like a startup, mindset of innovation company, innovative company.
And I remember we were talking about this a couple of years back, and recently I saw you already have some product, which is Linger.ai. If you can share more about that, that'll be amazing.
So yeah, as I mentioned, that for SDI, even though we were a social enterprise, we always wanted to see how can we accelerate that social impact. And my idea was always that I was inspired by Facebook, right? Like Facebook is so intuitive. I mean, if we take out the negative part of Facebook, it's actually a very easy to use product that has reached more than 2.5 billion people. And people who don't know how to use computers, they're able to use Facebook, they're able to connect with people. So if we could use something as intuitive, so that was the whole idea, that can we use technology to reach people who are otherwise not being able to access this knowledge, access these resources. So that was the mindset. And as we did things manually for SDI Academy, as we personalized based on the needs of the migrant workers, and the part that really helped them most was knowing what their common mistakes were. And we realized that it was quite similar for people with certain native language. And if we understand that native language underlying speech pattern for those native language, we can give them customized feedback. And the idea was, how can we bring that to scale? And not necessarily just for migrants, but for anyone in general to learn a language. And that's when we discovered there was this huge industry where there's not, like the language industry itself has been very obscure. And it's a $54 billion market, but people were not able to digitalize that part, even though there's about 65,000 language learning apps available, because people still prefer to have a personal tutor. So the idea was that I think we didn't want to make it just a standalone app. The whole idea was having a hybrid learning model where you could have your personalized, learning pathways, and have your tutors have the tools to help you in a more personalized way. So even in a classroom, we realized that we couldn't really spend one-on-one time with a lot of the migrant workers who had different problems. And we had to segregate them based on their native languages and things like that. But with technology, we wanted to empower that so that we could have a class full of people from different backgrounds, but they could all access and they could all get personalized tools. So that was the whole vision behind Linger.ai. So we have a prototype ready at this point in time. We are trying to explore that with especially with this situation that just broke out. I think it sort of forced us to make things a little quicker. So we're glad that we had that vision early on. We were actually working on something, and thankfully the timeline worked out quite okay. And now we're just putting up content. Of course, it's not a perfect product by any means, but I think it's a good start. And I'm glad that we had that vision to begin with.
And yeah, you kind of alluded to the COVID-19 outbreak right now, the pandemic, and it's getting quite bad in a lot of Asian countries. I wonder if you can share from the perspective of migrant workers, people who have left their families and their countries to work in foreign lands. Like, are there any stories from the ground or any information you can share? Like, what is the situation they are finding themselves in right now?
So I think I would say that there is quite a bit of things that are going on in the migrant worker space because of this outbreak. To be honest, they were one of the first few to get infected. We had first few cases who were migrant workers. And I'll share you one of the story. One of the migrant worker who was one of the early cases, I think it was case 49. And he was in the ICU for until 2 days ago. And his wife was pregnant back at home. His wife was 9 months pregnant. That was about a month ago. And he was in the ICU, and we were all worried about what's going to happen. Is the baby going to see his father or not? And the whole idea is that it's already so hard that the family is away. They're far apart from one another. But having to worry about the father being in the ICU and being in a critical condition, it was, I think, a lot more traumatizing for the mother itself. But we're very glad that we had a lot of support from, I think the whole nation sort of rallied, sent about a dozen boxes of goodies and gifts for the baby, and the baby was just born yesterday. So things like that, how the nation came together, and he was also released from ICU just 2 days ago, and he's in a better condition. So things like that, right? But in general sentiment, what happened was, initial stage, people panicked. A lot of people panicked because they didn't know what was going on. They were confused, and most importantly, at that point in time, I think Singapore was the second country to be infected right after China, and a lot of them panicked and went back home. Quite a number of people were actually going back home in droves. But the thing is, it became worse, and things became even worse in the situation. But now I think that the panic has sort of subsided a little bit, and we are also a lot more aware. Things are a lot more transparent. People are knowing what is happening, that this is a whole global pandemic. And to be honest, Singapore is one of the safest places to be, because we are tracing things, we are making sure that everybody is safe. And as people, we sort of formed a task force with the migrant worker organizations, whether it's a health organization, NGOs, as well as education companies like ourselves, and big bodies that are pulling resources together to inform. We're actually launching a chatbot very soon with one of the partner organizations who are trying to get the information to these migrant workers and see and collect feedback. How prepared are they following the WHO standards? So we're trying to disseminate as much information as possible. At the same time, also looking at some other ground-up initiatives. How can we distribute essential hygiene kits, distribute essential groceries, foods, because a lot of them are not able to come out of the dormitories and they're not able to go out. And it's, in fact, one of the biggest cluster was the Mustafa Center area, where a lot of people actually gathered a lot in that sector. So how can we minimize those movements and yet bring those convenience to themselves? So things like that. We have a few spin-off initiatives that are coming out to help them with this thing. So we're trying what we can do, but most importantly, I think we're trying to raise awareness, get everybody to be calm and know that we are all in this together. And this, for anything, I think it has made people realize that it is very, very important to take care of one another, regardless of whether they're migrant workers or locals or whatever background they have.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think it goes even way back when you started the campaign of "I'm no stranger." I think that's kind of like a core belief of your organization, that we are all the same, and we should and we can help each other out, and we shouldn't waste an opportunity to serve others. It would be great if you could share a little bit about that campaign with us.
Absolutely. I think the whole vision of SDI Academy was to promote social inclusion. And language was one medium how we can actually break one of those barriers that we have between the two different society, two different stratas of the society. But beyond that, it was really our inner limitations that actually prevented us from coming to one another. So we launched a campaign called "I'm No Stranger," where if you buy a T-shirt that says "I'm no stranger," it will actually lead to migrant workers getting a gift of an English guidebook called Dr. English. The whole idea is that if we come together and show solidarity and support towards the migrant workers and show that we are no stranger to one another, but that will actually break down the inner limitations that we have to begin with. And in the long run, because it is also gifting towards their language learning, it'll help to eliminate the language barrier. So that was sort of the whole vision. And I think now with this crisis and with these things coming out, we are realizing more than ever before how important it is to be socially inclusive, to know that we need to take care of everybody. We cannot leave anyone behind because of the situation. It doesn't care. It doesn't discriminate who is who. So we need to take care of one another more than ever before.
Yeah, great. And SDI has been recognized for its work quite a bit. And you also, got Ashoka to recognize your work. I'd love to hear how was that experience and how has that helped your organization do even more good work?
Absolutely. I think we've been very, very fortunate that we've been recognized for a lot of the work that we've been doing. I think the whole idea of getting this recognition is so that we can do more. We can pull together resources that we'd otherwise not have access to. And Ashoka Fellowship, I think more than anything, what it provides is mentorship and guidance, and the ability to sort of stand on the shoulders of giants, people who are very successful in their different careers, So one of the best mentor that I received was from Ashoka, one of the Ashoka support network mentor, and he's been mentoring me regularly. And in fact, he's going to be on board of our nonprofit arm that we are setting up right now. So the relationship that we build through this, the guidance and insights that we receive from people who have been successful in their own career, and the perspectives that they bring on board, I think these are the things that really helps you. Otherwise, normally setting up an organization is, of course, takes a lot longer. But having this, the whole idea is it accelerates, it cuts down your time. And we have such a short life, right? Having this recognition really helps to raise the voice. And even getting featured in different news outlets, it really raises voice. All the volunteers that we've ever received were mostly, if not all of them, were from such publicity. And people rallied together, people came on board. And that's the whole strength of SDI, right? How can we bring people together from different points in life, different things together, whether it's corporates, whether it's individuals, whether it's, ground up initiatives. People were inspired to start their own initiatives after looking at, hearing our story. So that sort of definitely motivates us. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm, by the way, looking forward to having your nonprofit arm listed on Give Asia when it's ready.
We're definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, I'll definitely.
Yeah. One question I have for you, and I think a lot of social enterprises face that early on, which is balancing between sustainability and balancing between social impact. And, how do you think about it? How do you prioritize it? And is it essentially like running two companies or like running two organizations with both focuses? So I wonder if you've had any insights or any advice to share on that aspect.
Yeah, honestly speaking, it's the truth is it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to have both the social impact as well as being sustainable. And one way or the other, it prevents innovation, because to innovate, you need to invest in research and development and experiment and be able to have that resources to experiment, right? Which you don't have if you're not sustainable, if you don't have that kind of resources. So even though we've had amazing ideas over the years, I think if those were properly implemented, we would have accelerated our impact a lot more. But because of the lack of resources, because of the limited things that we had, we couldn't implement many of those things. And that's what really forced us to rethink a lot of our strategies just last year. I've heard this somewhere that I think every 5 years, you'll go through a crisis of an organization. And ours was just last year when we just turned 5 last year. And we had to rethink, re-strategize all throughout the entire journey. I never wanted to really have a nonprofit arm and run two organizations, because I thought that would be betraying the social mission. We were on this mission to prove that social enterprise works. But truth be told, I think it's very rare that you have both socially viable models that are also sustainable. It's very rare. There is a reason that this gap exists, because it's not commercially possible to do things. But of course, having said that, if you have sort of a booster of some sort of aid that can help you go through those obstacles, you can still be commercially viable in the long run. So for us, I think that's when we realized that a lot of things that we wanted to invest our resources in, whether it's about technology, whether it's about content development, whether it's about outreach to the migrant workers, or doing edutainment, mixing entertainment with education for the migrant workers, we needed a lot more resources than we have available readily. So that sort of pushed us to the idea that what if we had a nonprofit arm that only focused on non-revenue generating things, and especially things like impact measurement, because we wanted to go really deep into impact measurement. And I was really inspired by the Nobel Prize winner Abhijit Banerjee and his wife Esther Duflo, the other economists who won the Nobel Prize together last year. And their whole research, I've been following their work on poverty trap for years now, but last year I think it became a lot more, the whole world knew about it, became a lot more mainstream. And those experiments and the randomized control experiments that they ran over thousands of families, that's exactly the spirit that we had, but also to implement and go in the long run, understanding those issues, really going deeper into how can we enable and empower the people with the most potential for transformation. So we are hoping that with that nonprofit arm, we're able to run those experiments, things that does not necessarily generate revenue, but it's really, really essential for us to know the direction. How can we navigate through? Where is the right pathway for us to go to? How do we measure the impact, collect those data, and to have a feedback system? because these are really expensive method, but very necessary. Otherwise, we'd be working for centuries, but we don't know what is exactly happening. Are we really uplifting people? And also, now we're trying to go beyond migrant workers. We're looking at migrant workers' families. Can we uplift an entire family out of that cycle? And can we help that family become a role model for their communities as well? So we are actually going to their entire family as a unit. So to do all that, their children's education, their wife's entrepreneurial spirits, things like that, to support all of that, I think the return on investment is not going to be very easy to bring that back, plow those back. So having an arm that actually supports that, I think would be really, really beneficial. And I think it's not necessarily that we are betraying our social mission. It's rather to really achieve that social mission, we need to have this done. Yeah. So I'll say that it's very hard.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think I came across this concept of like long-term philanthropy. I think what you are doing with that nonprofit arm is actually playing things out on a more long-term basis and at a more systemic level, which is commendable. That's really great. For you in your professional journey so far, running SDI Academy, I'm sure there's been a lot of influences through books, through other people who have mentored you. What has been the best piece of advice you've received throughout this journey, which has proved helpful?
I think there's been a lot of advices, right? But I think one thing that really changed my perspective was that having good intention alone is not enough. And you really need to understand, how do you motivate the people? Sometimes even the people that you want to help might not understand the benefits that they're getting in the long run. So how do you package it to them for their benefits is very important. And having the whole long-term vision is very, very important, so that you really understand that are you actually helping, or if things go wrong, things might be worse off than they were before. So that's one thing that really, in a way, always puts me back into positions that we always feel like we are day one of our startup phase, right? That are we on the right path? So we always have that check and balances that to validate our model. Are we on the right path? Is it just good intention, or is it actually going to be beneficial to them? So I think having that piece of advice really always grounds us and helps us to realize, we're doing it because it actually transforms their life, and not just because we want to feel good or we just have a good intention.
Yeah, I read Jeff Bezos quoting like good intentions don't last, good systems do. So kind of the same mindset. Okay, I think this is towards the end. So I would also want to ask you, like, let's say you had a billboard and you could put any message on that billboard. What message would you put on that billboard?
I would say that the right time to start anything, whatever you've been thinking about starting, is right now. Because I think a lot of time we are waiting for that perfect timing. We're waiting for the perfect opportunity. Something's going to happen, but things should happen right now. And even if you start small, things will progress. So yeah, the right time to start is right now.
That's great. And where can people find out more about your organization and your new products on the web?
So they can find for SDI, sdi-academy.org, or for Linger is linger.ai, www.linger.ai. Yeah.
Thank you, Sazzad. This has been amazing. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your incredible
Thank you for having me.
Cheers,
man. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
for doing it. Cheers. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.